Mr. Chiles.
Good morning.
Sure, you did a great job of explaining that as in basic of terms as can be, but it's not necessarily intuitive to everyone, so I just have a few clarification questions here.
Sure.
Sir, for the most part, everything you testified to as far as the Taser, how it's designed, the PowerPoint, is it fair to say that's in the hands of a trained person?
Yes.
And Axon's classification of a Taser as a less lethal weapon, is that in the hands of a trained person?
Yes, there's a lot of caveats and warnings that need to be gone through and thought about during a deployment or even before a deployment. So yeah, I would classify it, it's really built for a professional or for a person who's gone through training on that platform of weapon.
Okay, and I want to get to that training in just a moment here, but in the hands of an untrained person, would Axon market this as a less lethal weapon?
It's designed to be less lethal, but in the hands of a person who's not trained on it or someone who has ill intent, it could be dangerous.
Now, as far as training goes, can you just give us a snapshot as far as how is Axon, do they start the training that an officer ultimately gets within their department? Can you just, if you're aware?
Yeah, so overall, how it works is Axon develops the training program, but each agency is responsible for their own training. Typically, an agency, depending on the size, they'll have one or a certain number of instructors. So they are responsible for teaching the users, the ones who are going to be carrying the weapon. Those instructors, they are taught master instructors who are taught by Axon. So Axon trains the trainers who will eventually train the users.
And does a department designate someone to go meet Axon for training to become what's deemed a master Taser instructor?
Yeah, a master instructor goes through a week-long course, and it includes PowerPoints, but also practical drills as well.
And then that master Taser instructor goes back to their department and trains their officers on what they learned.
Correct.
Now, Axon, as we've seen here, they developed their own materials, PowerPoints and whatnot that explain the device and how it's designed and intended to be used.
Correct.
And that includes warnings, is that right, about the device?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland, could you please put that PowerPoint back up there? And you're familiar with these materials, is that fair to say that you just went over with the prosecutor?
Yes.
I don't plan to go into the whole PowerPoint, but just on a few topics here. And I think it was already pulled up. Axon, the manufacturer of this Taser 7 device, warns that it's a serious weapon and should be treated as such at all times. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do the Axon materials and warnings tell officers that the Taser is no longer dangerous after both cartridges are deployed?
No.
Could you please go to slide 13? That was People's Exhibit 2022.
I don't know, is this ours?
It's exactly the same.
All right, this would be, it's also Defense Exhibit G6.
Is it the same documents? We don't need two.
So it appears to be, so I just want to, they could use mine or they could use theirs.
But which exhibit was it, 24?
Under the people.
Ours is 24, correct?
24 or Defendants G.
Well, that hasn't been admitted, so G6 hasn't been admitted.
Are you familiar with this PowerPoint?
Yes, I am.
Then it'd be duplicative, so like we don't need two exhibits that are the exact same thing.
Well, theirs is included as part of the larger geography training. power DMS training. So they're, it's a little bit in that regard.
So this is part of their exhibit.
Yeah, we don't have, yes, it is.
Okay, so then it will still be duplicative, just because it's extra, but you can, refer to the slide that's within the PowerPoint, because I think it would be the same slide.
I don't know. I'm sorry, we get three attorneys on this one. I don't think the numbers might not be the same. We recognize it's duplicative, Your Honor, but because it's a larger package and a smaller package, if he's referring to something on the record as slide 12, it might not be the same slide as in the
Well,
larger
you can
package.
check that out. Which slide is this for you?
It's gonna be different because our exhibit does start with the GRP, some of the training stuff, so these, they're later on, so it will be different.
This is technically a separate, would then be a separate piece of material here.
So it's still not admitted.
And I would move for the admission based on this expert's knowledge of this.
And that's a
G6.
Okay. Is there any objection to G6?
No objection.
Okay. Then exhibit G6 is now admitted.
Thank you. This slide number 13. Now, I think you've already discussed this on direct examination, but the Taser 7 is worn can cause serious injury or death, correct?
Yes,
And the device as a whole has the ability to incapacitate human beings, correct?
correct.
The device has the ability to immobilize a person. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it causes their muscles to contract and they cannot control them.
Now, you mentioned studies. Is that often discussed that for a police officer in particular, if they're immobilized, if they're incapacitated, that gives the subject an opportunity to take their firearm? Is that often discussed?
Yes, if a person's incapacitated, they can't defend themselves or their equipment.
Now, besides incapacitation or immobilization capabilities, it's also capable of causing serious injury, or I think you even mentioned death, if just by directly targeting it on certain areas of the body. Is that what's warned?
Yes,
And are those, I think it may have been mentioned in one of the slides, those areas are often are referred to as sensitive areas to avoid?
yes.
Now, risk of serious injury or death with these targeted areas, targeting areas that are sensitive, can that occur in both probe mode or in the drive stun, the contact mode?
It could happen in either mode. Even if the weapon's just armed, there could be danger due to the laser. So that can cause eye injury without even activating the weapon.
All right, thank you. So proper training's critical to try to avoid these potential serious injuries or perhaps even death. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And the device, as we discussed, is less lethal if used in the hands of a trained person as designed and intended. Is that fair to say?
yes.
Now, a trained person is obviously notified about these potential risks of the device.
Yes,
Correct.
they go through not only the PowerPoint classroom, but they also go through practical drills where they're put through scenarios to think about these things.
And I just want to, for a moment here, go over to the sensitive location topic that I know was brought up somewhat on direct examination. Could you please go to page 41? Does that train the user on the preferred target areas frontally?
Yes, we looked earlier at the rear view, the rear of the body, which was mostly, most of the body except for the head. And then on the front, we include the groin area, the chest, and the face and head.
And there's mention of increases dart to heart safety margin. What's that?
So the dart to heart is, there was a study previously where the heart could be temporarily affected by the taser, but the dart had to be a certain distance from the heart, and it was like millimeters or a centimeter. I forget the exact number. And so to remove that risk, we removed the chest as a preferred target zone. There's typically some muscle there, but not a lot. So we didn't lose much from just removing that from there. But to get the probe that close to the heart, it would have to be a very skinny person, very small chest, with and the probe would have to penetrate right over the heart and discharge right to it.
Okay. And it's clear to the user, do not intentionally target head, eyes, throat, chest, or genitals. Is that right?
Correct.
And I believe you mentioned use of the taser probes to the eyes could cause blindness.
Yes.
And you just brought up the heart. Now, is the neck and the throat also put as an area to avoid?
Yes.
And also the genitals?
Yes.
And would an untrained person intuitively know to avoid these areas to potentially cause serious injury or death?
They would not. And I want to clarify, you said something about probe to the eye, but I believe even discharging electricity into the eye without the probe, like for a drive stun, or even I mentioned the laser to the eye. So it's not probe to the eye, the only thing that could cause blindness. There's several other factors.
Okay, and I was going to get to another one of those that I think you brought up on direct examination already, but let's just take the cartridge, the probes, the wires out of the equation. You brought up that the device still has the ability to administer a drive stun.
Correct.
And that also delivers an electrical charge onto a subject, has that ability, correct?
Yes, that would discharge into their body.
Could you just hold up the exhibit there? What is that exhibit marked?
23.
How do you ignite the drive stun function on the device?
First, the weapon has to be armed, so the safety switch has to go up, which is just move it with your thumb or finger. And then press it for pure drive stun without probes. You press the arc switch either on the left side or the right side.
That's all it takes to have the drive stun ignite is pressing that switch.
Correct.
And if used by a trained person as designed, is the drive stun meant to cause localized pain?
Yes.
How far from the subject do you have to be then to use the drive stun? It's contact, correct?
Yeah, it's arm's length.
Okay. And if I use the drive stun, press the drive stun against somebody, how long does that last? That the drive stun's working?
The activation, or
Yes.
If that's depends. If no cartridges have been deployed, the activation will go for 5 seconds. But if probes have been deployed, I'm sorry, I have that backwards. If probes have been deployed, pressing the arc switch will activate for 5-second cycle.
Okay. And the drive stun alone, I believe you mentioned, all by itself, drive stun, that does not cause this NMI, this neuromuscular incapacitation by itself?
By itself, without probes, no, there's no NMI.
But the drive stun is very painful. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And does the drive stun run risk that it has the ability to immobilize someone?
Without probes deployed, there's no chance of NMI to immobilize through muscle, but it can temporarily jar someone because of the pain.
Sure. And depending on the person's condition, could that immobilize the individual?
It could temporarily.
Okay. Now, I think you already had mentioned the drive stun itself to sensitive areas. Have you ever been drive stunned before?
Yes, many times.
Has anybody ever deployed it against you?
Yes, once.
Okay. Would you let somebody drive stun you in the eye?
No.
How about the throat?
Throat? No.
How about the genitals?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Could it cause serious injury?
Yes.
And just to clarify, that's cartridges out of the equation, just this drive stun contact, correct?
Correct.
And you mentioned drive stun to the throat, the pressure could collapse here, I'm sorry, what was it?
Trachea.
Trachea. So that could be even worse than a serious injury, correct?
Yes, I mean, the electricity itself is not going to do anything except for the pain, but pressing on a sensitive area like the trachea, a person typically doesn't sit still when a drive stun is applied to them. They're trying to move, so it's easy to crush the trachea in that situation.
And just on this prolonged or repeated use, I think you had talked about that. Axon warns to avoid prolonged or repeated uses, is that right?
Yes.
And would an untrained person have that knowledge?
No.
If you were deploying cartridges on me, or deploying a cartridge, fires the probes on me, makes proper connection, is that sometimes referred to that I then take the ride?
Yes, it's been called that. Typically in volunteer exposures, yes.
How long does the ride last?
5 seconds.
Now, I think you've explained as far as when you deploy the cartridge, how do you deploy the cartridge?
Cartridge deployment is done via the trigger switch, so that's this one.
Take much pressure to pull that trigger.
A little pressure, but not much. It's easy to do.
Okay. And if you deployed and there was a live cartridge in there, it would then essentially send the probes through the air towards me, correct?
Correct.
And the probes would stay connected back to the device by the wires, correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as the wires go, are officers often trained to avoid making contact with the wires and probes when possible?
Yes, we train them to cuff under power, which means the weapon is active, and so they're under the power of the neuromuscular incapacitation, but we warn them to avoid the wires and the probes because they could receive some of that shock.
Now, the probes, and I think we see them right in the exhibit there, it has a sharp end to it, correct?
Yes.
And does that have some type of barb on it,
Yes, on the Taser 7, there's 2 barbs on it.
similar to like a fish hook? Is that fair to
Similar.
say? Now, and you had mentioned that in order for the probe to have an effect on an individual, it does not necessarily have to penetrate their skin, is that right?
That's correct. Due to the high voltage, we design it to be able to arc to the skin if it doesn't penetrate through.
You had talked about this Taser 7 device has the capability of holding 2 cartridges, correct?
Correct.
And one of the cartridges is what's referred to as a close probe cartridge, is that what it's referred to?
We call it close quarter or
Close
CQ.
quarter, I'm sorry. Close quarter, okay. And that cartridge gives the officer, the trained person, more of an ability to use and have that device be to be more optimal when they within close ranges. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And as we watch that video there, it says 4 feet. Is that an optimal range?
That's the optimal to create 12 inches of spread between the probes.
Now, this optimal range, is that a distance that's created in the laboratory?
It was more, I don't know if it was a laboratory, but yeah, it's in a test setting. There's been several studies that were done on effectiveness, and we call it motivation, where you get someone really motivated, they're going to try to ignore the pain and get to a task. And we see the difference areas on the body and the spreads between the probes, how effective it is in stopping them from going to that task.
And the reality out in the field, though, officers can deploy probes at closer ranges than 4 feet. They're allowed to do, that's reasonable, correct?
Oh, yeah, and there's situations where you, even at a close range, say if someone's hunched over, you could still hit a probe and arm and get a lot of spread even though you're at a close range. So it's all depends on the situation.
So 4 feet may be optimal, but you could still cause NMI even at closer ranges than that.
Yeah, that 4 feet was just saying the probes will be at 12 inches at that point.
And let's say the probes do hit very close to each other, maybe not optimal. Is there another third point of contact that the officer can use to create NMI?
Yes, actually, we watched a video of a graduation video, and that was called a 3-point. So probes were deployed close range and then brought over to the leg. The weapon was brought over to the leg, and that completes the circuit and causes more muscles to contract, giving NMI in that short spread situation.
And when the officer initially fired the probes into the back of that dummy, was he approximately 1 foot away from the dummy?
Yeah, he was close.
Yeah, or closer perhaps?
Yeah, possibly closer.
But then he followed up with the drive stun to a different area of the body, correct?
Correct.
And that's an effective means of delivering NMI.
Yeah, we train tactics to deliver NMI even in a close range, if you're closer than 4 feet or just hand to hand.
Now, I just want to talk a little bit about re-energizing the probes. We're not able to do a live demonstration in the courtroom here, but let's just say that you have the device there. Okay? You fire both cartridges. So now on the floor here, if they were to land on the floor, we would have 4 probes and the wires connecting those probes back to the device, correct?
Correct.
And officers are trained to avoid contact with the wires and probes, right?
Yes.
And let's say the 5 seconds goes by from the initial deployments. Can the probes and the wires be re-energized?
Yes, they can.
And can you just explain that a little bit, please?
Assuming the weapon's still armed, they would either press the arc switch or pull the trigger, would reactivate all 4 probes.
And ignite the probes for how long?
5 seconds.
And what if I am in contact with some of the probes and the wires? Am I at risk that I could experience the effects of the taser?
Yes.
Now, do I need to be in contact with 2 probes necessarily to feel the effects, or could contact with the wire as well create a circuit upon me?
Contact with the wire could create that circuit. They're insulated. They're designed to be insulated to the 50,000 volts. However, if there's any flaw in the insulation, a nick in the wire, someone stepped on it, or even the wire as it's coming out of the probe is scraped, that could allow the high voltage to jump through it. So if you're close enough to that wire, you don't have to be on it. If you're close enough to the wire, it can jump to you and deliver the effect to you.
And let's say I'm close to the wire, and then you come up and drive stun, and I'm just in contact with 1 wire, 1 probe, 1 exposed wire or 1 probe. Could that create NMI upon me?
If you point to your knee, so you're like kneeling on the wire and your drive stun to the head?
Or anywhere else?
Anywhere in the upper body, yes, I believe that would cause NMI, because that would be the same as if a probe is in your knee and a probe is wherever that drive's done. So you would have pretty much most of your muscle mass affected.
Okay, and sir, you've seen the videos here, correct, from the prosecutor as far as this incident here?
Yes,
And the two men are struggling for control of the taser, is that fair to say?
yes,
And it appears the wire and probes are all around the men during the struggle?
yes,
And you later analyzed the wires and the probes from this incident, correct? At least some of them?
yes.
And did you actually observe what appears to be blood on one of the probes?
I believe it was on 2 other probes.
Okay. Now, going back, the prosecutor showed you, or talked about in your report, the second deployment. And were you later able to find from the computer data and watching the cell cam video that there was a second deployment that had taken place?
Yes,
And you mentioned that it appears the taser was pressed into the ground when the second cartridge deployed,
yes,
but that this second deployment was short-circuited?
some pulses sensed a short circuit, some sensed a resistance. So it wasn't short circuit the entire time, it was delivering charge into the ground as well.
Okay. And the sound, if I ignite a cartridge, that's not as loud as a gunshot, correct?
Correct.
And so by the device being shot into the wet ground, it did not carry out its normal 5-second sequence? Is that fair to say?
Due to the short circuit that I saw multiple times, it stopped before the 5-second cycle was over.
Now, from watching that video, you can't tell whether or not the officer noted there was a second cartridge deployment, can you?
We have a jack that goes coming beyond his expertise here, Your Honor.
He's just testifying to his observations of the video, but I
think he would have to speculate, so I'll sustain that objection.
watching the video after the second cartridge deployment, does the officer continue to fight to attempt to get the weapon? Is that your observation?
Yes, they continue fighting over the weapon.
And does the officer seem to continue to treat the weapon seriously?
It appears so, yes.
And does he continue to tell the other person to let go of and drop the taser?
Yes, I believe that's the words he was using.
But now we know, based on the benefit of a video and data, that there was a second cartridge deployment, correct?
Correct.
But even after both cartridges were deployed, 5 seconds goes by. Based on the proximity of Officer Schurr in that video to the probes and wires, and what you explained as far as this ability to re-energize the probes or wires, the drive stun, could Officer Schurr still have been at risk of suffering the effects of NMI?
Yes, he could.
And could that have been by contact with probes or wires?
Yeah, contact with probes, wires, or drive stun. All the above could have caused NMI.
Do you think that even with both cartridges deployed, 5 seconds passes, that the taser still deserved its classification as a serious weapon?
Yes.
Now, as far as the fact that the grass was wet, okay, and we've got the wires and probes amongst the parties, if the device was activated again, what could the wet grass have any effect as far as somebody perhaps feeling the effects of the device?
There's a misconception that water increases electricity strength. It does not. However, it does create more chance of a path to you. So that's why you don't go near power lines when it's wet, because you could cross that path where electricity will travel through the water. So in this case, the water helped increase the risk of the electricity traveling to either of them, laying in the wet grass and activating a taser. Both of them were at risk of feeling the effects.
Okay. And just taking the wires, the probes back out of it once again, and talking about just the drive stun, just the contact ability of that device. After the cartridge is deployed, the device still maintain its ability to administer a drive stun, correct?
Yes, I mean, drive stun is a use tactic. It's not really a mode of the weapon, so it's, so anyone holding it can do a drive stun. If it powers up and turns on, if they can press a button, they can do a drive stun.
And with these men in the close proximity that they were, does Officer Schurr appear to be in close enough proximity where the drive stun could have been used upon him?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to conclude here, but just to clarify a few points. If the taser probes are deployed on a subject, they are at risk of suffering NMI for a minimum of 5 seconds. Fair to say?
Suffering, experiencing, yes.
Okay. And if a subject disarms a police officer or taser and deploys the probes at the officer, then that officer is vulnerable to perhaps have other weapons accessed or be assaulted. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. If they were under the effects of NMI, they can't defend themselves or their equipment.
The taser can still cause NMI at a distance less than 4 feet, particularly with a follow-up from the drive stun, correct?
Correct. Not limited to that, but yes, definitely.
If the probes are deployed at certain sensitive areas of the body, this may result in serious injury or death itself, correct?
Yes, they're sharps with barbs, so like an injury to an eyeball. Not only is a puncture to the eyeball, but also it has to come out as well with a barb, so it can cause serious injury.
An untrained person would be unaware of this sensitive area training. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to be aware of it.
Therefore, Axon would not necessarily consider a taser a less lethal weapon in the hands of an untrained person.
That's correct.
Just recapping, even after both cartridges deployed, as we now know is the case here, the Taser 7 maintains the ability to re-energize all 4 probes and wire by simply touching the arc switch or pulling the trigger, correct?
Pressing the arc switch, yes.
I'm sorry, pressing the arc switch. And if an officer is in contact with certain probes and or wires and the arc switch is pressed, then the officer is at risk of suffering the effects of the taser's electricity. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
I think I've said it enough, but even after all cartridges deployed, the contact drive stun can work together with the already probes, wires on the ground to close the circuit and cause NMI.
Yes, that's true.
And it's as simple as just pressing the device upon somebody and pushing the button, correct?
Or pulling the trigger, correct.
And Axon warns, do not press the drive stun on certain sensitive areas of the body, correct?
That's correct.
So even after both cartridges deployed, 5 seconds passed, the Taser 7 weapon still maintains the ability to deliver incapacitation, immobilization, or its contact drive stun can still be used on sensitive areas to cause serious injury or death.
Yes, if it's activated again, yes.
Okay. Just one moment, please. Does the drive stun make noise? When you ignite the drive stun, does it make some type of noise?
Activating the weapon does make noise, yes.
Okay. Like what? What noise does the drive stun make?
I hate describing this. It's difficult to describe. So when the weapon is arcing in open air, arcing across the electrodes, it's like a loud clacking type of sound
Okay.
at 22 times per second. So it's a fast clacking.
Okay. Fairly intimidating.
Yes, we even train, there's called an arc warning, so without deploying, you can press the button and show the arc and they hear it, and that sometimes is a deterrent to get compliance without even deploying the weapon.
Okay. And just one other topic, deploying the probes at less than 4 feet, the optimal range, there's still an ability for the device to cause NMI at less than 4 feet, correct?
Yes,
And if we watched a voluntary tasing video and the individual was shot from a foot or two, it still has the ability to lock somebody up pretty good. Is that fair to say?
yes, the potential's there, yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Becker?
Yes, Your Honor, I have some follow-up. We'll start. Gonna do the VR screen. Gonna go to Exhibit 1. You've seen this, obviously, you talked about it in your testimony. The cell phone video.
Yes,
Okay. This is more for noise, but you can also watch it too. Turn on that sound.
Like the lights dim? And then are you starting from the beginning or?
No, it's gonna be 45 seconds, Your Honor.
Oh, thank you.
There's more of the sound there. What was that pop?
the initial pop was the cartridge being deployed.
So that's the shot, if you will, the air, the gaseous air, the nitrogen gas.
Correct.
That tinkling after that, what is that?
That's the loud clacking I was describing.
Okay, that's what you hear for a drive stun.
So drive stun is a tactic. So whether you're using a drive stun or not doing drive stun, the activating the weapon and it's arcing in open air, it's going to make that sound. So that can happen on a probe deployment or drive stun.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at. That's what you're
Right.
talking about in terms of that clacking noise.
Yes.
So I'm going to go a little bit further here. Let me go to 52 seconds.
Good, man. Let go of the taser. Ah. Let go of the taser. No, like he good, like he.
Okay, you heard that, the pop there. What was that?
That was the deployment of cartridge 2.
You didn't hear the crackling there as you described it. Can you, but why not? Was there any particular reason?
The difference there is that the probes were going into the wet ground and conducting through. So the sound is made by the high voltage arc jumping through the air. In that case, there's some arcing going on, but most of the energy is conducting through the ground, which is quieter.
Now, they asked you some questions about this clackling noise. Did you ever hear any other other than those two? Did you ever hear any sort of clackling at all through the rest of the video?
No.
When you talk about going to an untrained person, okay, first of all, my understanding first, an untrained person wouldn't have to know there's a safety switch, right? To be able to operate it.
Correct.
And if you pull the trigger for a drive stun, that's not necessarily gonna work, is my understanding. Is that what you said?
No, the trigger will activate the weapon.
But will the drive stun, if both cartridges, I guess, maybe if both cartridges are gone, is it simply pull the trigger? You said the side one had to be used, I thought.
No, so, and that's what I'm trying to explain. The drive stun is a tactic. That is you driving it forward. So that's your action. You activate the weapon and then do the drive stun. So you activate the weapon via the switch on the side or pull the trigger.
Okay, so that would, the pulling the trigger does all of those?
Yes.
Okay, so they'd have to know the size or something different then?
Well, either activates the weapon. I don't know what a person would know. I mean, being a gun shape, I think the trigger would be the most optimal, but that would activate all 4 probes as well.
But that'd have to be after the safety was engaged or disengaged, if you will.
Correct.
Now, in terms of a lot of the questions you had, they asked about the wires. Did you ever see any evidence of anybody impacted by the wires lying on the ground?
No.
There's nothing that showed somebody was suffering from, they was being shocked, the wires had any impact on anything that happened here.
Not during those 2 activations, no.
It's always possible, but nothing showed through this entire incident that there was any wires that were impacting anything here.
Yeah, there was no view of effect during those activations, but the potential was there, yes.
There was potential, that's it.
Right.
All right. Thank you, anything further?
Mr. Judge, your thoughts?
So there's potential, there's still risk, correct?
Yes,
It's something that should still be potentially feared, correct?
yes.
Now, you mentioned the second deployment was quieter than the first deployment, is that fair to say?
Yes.
That's all, thank you, sir.
Mr. Becker?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
A couple of questions. One, turning off the safety, do you have to do that each time you use the taser? Or once it's off, it's off?
No, so when you arm it and say deploy 2 cartridges, if you do not place the safety in the safe position, it still can be activated by the press of a button.
Okay. And then, do you have to hold the trigger down and using it as a drive stun, or do you have to hold the trigger or push the trigger and then hold it while you're using it
No, pull and release, it'll automatically go 5 seconds.
in the drive stun?
Drive stun or probe mode, it doesn't matter, it'll automatically go 5 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Any questions based on that?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Dodge,
And I guess, but just to clarify, to activate the drive stun, both cartridges are already deployed. You can simply press the trigger to activate the lightning bolt at the end of the device, is that correct?
To activate the high voltage, yes, it's trigger pull or arc button switch. Either one does the same thing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Becker?
Nothing, Your Honor.